If there's one trope that I think needs to be dead and buried in the fucking grave ASAP, it's Not Like Other Girls. This woman has teeth in her vagina. She bites off his dick with her vagina teeth. And she's like, great, I'm not a virgin anymore, so I don't have to marry the crown prince. Except the man that she's having sex with was actually the crown prince in disguise. Hi everyone, it's Shar. Welcome back to my channel. I am so excited, as I always am, but this time especially so because it is time for the Q1 wrap up. In the beginning of 2024, I trialed this idea of not doing monthly wrap ups and instead doing a wrap up every 3 months. And this is the first wrap up. I definitely have thoughts about that. In this video, I'm going to be telling you all about the 34 books that I read throughout the months of January, February, and March. So without further ado, let's jump on in, and I will have timestamps so you can navigate this video however you wish to. So I'm going to start this off with some general reading stats. We'll keep it very brief, and then we'll go into the books that I DNF'd and then the books that I've read over the past few months. Let's start with where I got the books that I was reading and whether or not I was staying on track with my goal to read more of the books off of my physical TBR. So of the 34 books that I read 2 of those books on Audible, I read 3 of those books on Spotify, I read 6 of those books on Kindle Unlimited, I read 7 of those books in the library, I read 7 of those books from my own personal library, meaning that I own them, and I read 6 of those books on Everend. Fuller breakdown in terms of format of what I was reading. Of the 34 books that I read, 13 were audiobooks, 11 of the books were physical books, and 10 were ebooks. I read 5 manga, 4 novellas, and 25 novels, so the majority of what I was reading over the past 3 months were full-length novels. And as you all know, my goal has been to read down my physical TBR, and I'd say I'm about breaking even at this point because I also bought way more books this year than I did the entirety of last year, just because my local thrift store has been putting out bangers, okay? All of the most popular books for like 50 cents, $1, 75 cents. And I'm like, I do want to read them. And I'm weak, so I picked them up anyway. But breaking even, but outside of that, 27 of the 34 books that I read were borrowed. Yeah. 27. I love supporting my local library, but that means that for my reading goal of reading my own books, I only read 7 books that I own. That's not something I'm pleased about. But I read 10,602 pages, and my average rating was about a 3.8. And I wanted to put down my top 3 genres, but quite honestly, I was a romance girly for all of Q1 of 2024. The majority of what I read was romance. No other genre even came close to competing. Now let's talk about the books that I DNF. And for the sake of just explaining this, I only counted DNF'd books if I had made it more than 55 pages into the book. I only had 3 DNFs that qualified for this throughout Q1. The first book that I DNF'd was Before Forever by Harper Sky. This is the book that I picked up for free from like Stuff Your Kindle Day, and I don't remember what this book is about whatsoever. I just remember that it was really poorly written, and I remember that there was a lot of inconsistencies with the characters, and I just didn't like it. Although I believe I did attempt to read this and DNF this in a reading vlog, so if I can find which one, I'll have it linked in the description below in case you want to see my full thoughts on like why I DNF'd that book. Then I DNF'd Funny You Should Ask, which was a book that I unwrapped when I was doing my I Went on 3 Blind Dates with a Book for Valentine's Day video, which was a lot of fun, but one of the books that I unfortunately picked up was Funny You Should Ask, which is a book that I personally had no interest in ever reading, but I still gave it a fair go. I DNF'd this book at 30%. I just didn't like it. I found the premise annoying. I found our main female character to be a little bit manipulative, and I didn't like that this was based on a real life interview. It gave me the ick. And then finally, if you like this book, which I know some of you watching this video do really like this book, please look away now. You can just skip to the next section. I DNF'd Pucking Around. I did. I tried to like listen to it on the audiobook, then I tried to read it physically, and initially I was enjoying it, but like here's my issue. Let me give you a premise. New hockey team is formed in Florida, and it's comprised of all of these players with very complex backgrounds. They're going in and they're trying their hardest to prove prove themselves and really just create this sense of camaraderie. Although they start to develop feelings for each other, and you explore their relationship as they build the team, but also their own personal relationships. And in the end, they all decide to be in a relationship with each other. Doesn't that sound great? Here's the problem with fucking around. The main female character in here, the one who like all of the men are obsessed with, she was the epitome of I'm not like other girls, except that she's a nepo baby. She's apparently not like other girls because she's not, what do they call it? A puck bunny, but her being medical malpractice, it's apparently not an issue. Ew, not once did I believe that these men had any reason to be obsessed with her, but the author tells us that they're obsessed with her because she's not like other girls. If there's one trope that I think needs to be dead and buried in the fucking grave ASAP, it's not like other girls. I'm sick of it. I don't want to read it. Do you know people have like the, if it ends in pregnancy, like it ruins the book for me? For me, it's if it includes not like other girls, that whole persona, yuck. Absolutely fucking not. So I didn't like the female main character in here, and I would have been so much happier to read this book had she just not been in there. Why couldn't this be a relationship between all of the men? And beyond this, these men didn't even want a poly relationship. Apparently this woman is just the fucking god of the earth. Magic powers, because these men fall to their knees as soon as they fuck her. I love you. No, you don't. No, you don't. You've known her for all of 48 hours. Max. And I DNF this book at 30%, but I want you to keep in mind that Pucking Around is almost 800 pages. 30% was over 220 pages into the story. It most certainly was not the book for me, which was a shame because I did really love the men, and I thought there could have been such an interesting story with how they came together in their relationship, but it was ruined by not like other girls' nepo baby. So those are the books that I DNF'd, and now we can actually start talking about the books that I actually read. If I had a prediction, this video is almost 40 minutes long, so you know what, besties, let's just get into it. And I'm gonna go in order of my ratings. Now, please bear in mind, yes, I did read 34 books throughout the months of January, February, and March in Q1. However, some of these books were published by St. Martin's Press, and because this boycott is still ongoing, I will not be discussing any of the books on here that were published by St. Martin's Press. So if you notice a discrepancy between how many books I said I read versus how many books I'm actually discussing, that is why. But let's go in order, starting with my lowest ratings, which I'm happy to tell you, based on my high-ass rating, my lowest ratings was technically a 2.75, but I'm not going to talk about that book. Instead, we're going to start with my lowest ratings after that, which was a 3-star book. So in my 3 stars, I started the year off with Hoarded by a Dragon by Lillian Lark. I've previously enjoyed Lillian Lark's books. This one is following a thief whose like ex-mentor coerces her into doing like one last gig. She has to go steal from this dragon, except dragons are hoarders of treasure. So when she goes there, she actually runs into the dragon and he catches her and they have sex. And then she gets pregnant. It was a lot more emotional and angsty than I thought it would be. I was expecting like a lighthearted, silly, goofy story based on the premise, but that's not what this is at all. And I would warn you all that there are definitely content warnings in here for loss of a child in the past and just definitely exploring topics and conversations around grief. So it was much heavier than I thought it was, but I still really enjoyed it. I just thought that sections of this book dragged out longer than they needed to, and so I give it 3 stars. I read What the Heck for my Reading Booktuber's favorite video. This is a story about a warlock and a familiar, except that in this world, familiars are actually people with magical wealth, and familiars apprentice with warlocks in order to like learn more about magic. We're following 2 characters who come together, one who's a warlock forbidden from practicing magic, and the other one, our female main character, is a familiar, really wanting to become a witch and get practice with magic, but that's very difficult because there are way more familiars than there are witches and warlocks. So when she gets the opportunity to go apprentice with this warlock under the table, she jumps on it. It's their love story. I thought this was a little bit messy and chaotic. I didn't particularly love the writing style in here. If you watch that video, you know, OMG, WTF. You gotta watch the video to understand what the hell I'm referencing here. It was just fine. It dragged on too long for what it was, and I didn't particularly believe the relationship between the 2 characters. The first manga is The Way of the House Husband, which is following a man who is a house husband for a really successful like woman, except he used to be a Yakuza, I think it's called. So essentially, he kind of ran this gang in Japan, and he's just out there trying to live his best house husband life, but people are like, oh my gosh, it's the Yakuza. And he's like, leave me the fuck alone. I'm trying to make my wife dinner. She's had a hard day. It was just okay. Very slice of life, which I don't always love in manga, so it was just a 3-star for me. Very much influenced by Jana. I started Bro and the Beast, the entire series. This is where I start with volume 1, which I gave 3 stars. Bro and the Beast follows this frat bro, literally the epitome of a frat bro, who gets into a fight with his twin brother, and his twin brother really loves these romance novels set in the Omegaverse with this kind of werewolf pack, and in order to feel closer to his twin brother, he decides to read these books, even though they're definitely not his thing, as the epitome of frat bro. He reads them, he gets invested into them, but when he goes out to this party, he actually gets into a really bad car accident and wakes up in the same universe as this werewolf Omegaverse thing, where they're like, you're an Omega. And he's like, the fuck are you talking about? I am 6'2", 225-pound linebacker. I am not a fucking Omega. But of course he is, and he has replaced the female main character in the series as the werewolf main character's fated mate. It was very amusing. It's something that I read for like the lighthearted good times. It was definitely funny, but just know this is absolutely ridiculous, and that is not something you are meant to take seriously in any capacity whatsoever. Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi was unfortunately a disappointment for me because I don't like toxic female friendships, and that is ultimately what this book is about. So this is a gothic story following this woman who marries this man, and the condition of their marriage is that he can never ask her about her past, but of course her past comes up, and it's told in dual timelines, with one timeline being the current one following the bridegroom, and the other one being the past timeline following the relationship between these two girls who were the best of friends and who happened to look like sisters, and their relationship is extremely toxic. I should have liked this one, but I thought that the writing lent a little bit too far into almost like the purple prose category. It was definitely beautiful, but for me it was overwritten at times, and also the relationship was so toxic. Some of the things that Indigo does horrified me. Again, I read this in Booktuber's Favorites, so if you want to see my full opinion and like my full experience reading this book, check that video out. I actually did own this book, and this is I'll Never Be Your Crown Princess. I'm forgetting who this is by, but this is our second manga that I read throughout the past few months, and in this one, it is set in this world. I'm forgetting what it was, but essentially this woman has reincarnated as like the daughter of this very important person, and she is being put into an arranged marriage with the crown prince, but she doesn't really like him. She's like, I don't want to get married, actually. I don't want to do that. And you know a way I can make sure that I don't do that? If I'm not a virgin, because the royal family cannot marry anyone who is not a virgin. So she goes to this party to lose her virginity to like this kind of reek character who goes around just like fucking everybody, and she goes, and because she's reincarnated, she has all of this like sexual experience in her past life that she brings with her to this life. So she and this man end up having sex, and she's like, great, I'm not a virgin anymore, so I don't have to marry the crown prince. Except the man that she's having sex with was actually the crown prince in disguise. This was fun for what it was. I didn't love it as much as I wanted to, but I still had a pretty good time with it. I thought it was genuinely amusing, not super difficult to follow. There just wasn't enough plot going on for me to ever feel really invested in this. Then I read Next Door Nemesis, which follows this woman whose life kind of falls apart after her boyfriend really does her dirty, and she snaps and loses her shit and like essentially fucks up his entire car while singing No Scrubs by TLC. So people on her balcony in her apartment are like cheering her on, but also like recording her, and she ends up on World Star or something like that, and that ruins her entire career. So she's forced to move back to like her parents' house and to her childhood area. There's an HOA run by this man who was her former best friend turned enemy in high school, and the whole premise is that he's a dick, and to get her revenge, she's gonna run for HOA president to like get him out of there and just like be petty. I didn't love this because again, I don't love enemies to lovers, and also I thought both characters were deeply immature, and the whole setup for why she decides to run for HOA president, What this man did is such a red flag. I cannot even. And they so quickly go from I hate you to fucking. And like, what happened in between? Bro and the Beast Volume 2 was a solid 3-star read. We're following the same story where essentially Mr. Frat Bro is still in the Omegaverse world with Werewolf, who insists that he's an Omega, and then he's like, I'm not a fucking Omega. And the whole story is about him trying to convince these people that they are fictional people and he is a real life person and they really need to get a grip on fucking reality, even though they're fictional people. Not a lot happened in this one. I didn't think it was as funny as book 1, but I still enjoyed myself. Out on a Limb, which I also read in Booktuber's favorite by Hannah Bonham Young, is a surprise pregnancy story. This woman hooks up with this man at a Halloween party. She has a limb difference. He is an amputee. They have sex. They have great chemistry. They get pregnant and they decide to keep the baby, and you are following their relationship developing throughout her entire pregnancy. I've read this for Booktuber favorite. I've heard that, like, if you don't like the pregnancy trope, this book will change your minds. I'm here to tell you, no, it's not going to change your mind. I don't care about the pregnancy. I want to see more of the relationship. With that said, I still think that it was well written. I still enjoyed reading about these two characters. I think that Beau is such a fun and interesting character to read from in terms of he fits every stereotype that I look for when it comes to my soft boy romances. He definitely is that, plus he's hella fucking rich. But the issue that I had with it is what I already established. I don't like the pregnancy aspects of it, but I can still appreciate having a book which includes representation of both limb difference and amputee. A romance book with such strong disability representation, it just still was not a book that worked for me because of the whole premise being about a pregnancy. I thought this book could change my mind. It did not. Before I DNF'd Pucking Around, I read That One Night because it was included as like the audiobook prelude to the actual audiobook, and this is following the story of how said Nepo baby meets with this guy and they have a really hot like one night stand, and the whole book is them having sex for like, I don't know, 12 hours or something like that. And that's the setup to the start of the book, where apparently this one night of 12 hours of sex led this man to fall in love with her. This book most certainly could have fit into my video of I read the most unhinged romances you've ever heard of. But I read this book after that. That is To Ravish a Rogue by C.M. Nascosta. Now you may hear this title and think historical romance, which so do I. But let me tell you the story of what led to me reading this book. It was already on my radar, but like it wasn't top priority. And then someone in Riley's Discord is like, I'm reading this book and here's what just happened. And collectively we all go and pick it up. So unintentional buddy read throughout the month of March. But To Ravish a Rogue is the story of this woman who really needs to get back to her sister because her sister is really out here putting everyone at risk, and she's the only one who can calm her down. But she has no way to like actually get to her sister. She needs transportation, and she ends up on this boat pretending to be a cabin boy, but the captain of the ship like immediately recognizes that she's a woman, that she is not a cabin boy, and decides to play with her and like just have fun with her like treat her like she is a cabin boy, but like in very bizarre ways, just to make her uncomfortable and like have a laugh, which I believe is the premise of A Gentle Rogue, which is what inspired C.M. Nascosta to write this book. The pirate romance elements was fun, but I found this book difficult to follow along with for a majority of the story. The sexual scenes are something that I personally have never witnessed, and I will be spoiling something in just a second here, but I do really like their dynamics, and the fantasy elements of this was fun. It just felt so different for a C.M. Nascosta, and I'm going to tell you what about this book is super freaky. Spoilers in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you've been warned. This woman has teeth in her vagina. The thing that made us all read this book is she bites off his dick with her vagina teeth. Do you see why I could have included this in the most bizarre books I've ever fucking read? I like that she's more powerful than him. I think that's a lot of fun, but it does lead to questions of, if she is this creature who literally is just like the fucking ocean, why does she need help travel in the ocean? She is the ocean. And also, I made the mistake of looking up exactly what this person is. If you don't want to see it, just skip to the next book. But I'm going to show you. Yeah, that's what she is. That's what this man is having sex with. That is what she is. And I saw that. And now it lives rent-free in my head forever. And I read Cherry Magic, which is a volume 1 of a manga series. It's MM. And I believe I've heard this described as kind of like adult Heartstopper. So we're following a man who is a virgin, and he's just turned 30 years old. And for some reason, that's given him magical powers. He can now read minds, which he finds really, really annoying. Whenever he touches someone, he like hears all of their thoughts. So he ends up just like talking to his coworker, who's like a friend of his, accidentally touches him and like hears that his coworker has a crush on him, and that sends him into a whole ass spiral about his sexuality and his relationship with his coworker. He's very reluctant, but also his coworker's a sweetheart, and like he really likes that. I do think that the other male love interest in this is so sweet. Again, you all know I love the quote-unquote soft boy, and that's what this man is, and their relationship is really like fun to witness, but I didn't think this book was anything special. Now we can move on to my 4-star reads, which is the majority of what I read throughout 2024 thus far. So Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone was the first 4-star read of the year for me, and in this book we're following a man named Ernest who, you know, did some things that left his family really fucking pissed at him, but they're going on a family reunion because his brother is coming out of jail. This is set in Australia, by the way. So they go up to like this fancy ski lodge up in the mountains, and things are super awkward because this family is just full of drama and tension and things that happened, but it is a murder mystery because when they get there, a body is found. You're following that and also following this family entirely unraveling. When I first read this, I was like, this isn't a murder mystery, it's a family drama. And then I was like, no, it is a murder mystery. But I'm here to tell you 2 months later, it's both. It's mainly a family drama with a murder mystery element, because the murder mystery, ultimately who dies, doesn't fucking matter. I would have given it 5 stars because I do really love the way this is written in terms of how the narrator is like interjecting in the story. I don't like family dramas, and it was leaning a little bit too much into like the domestic side of murder mystery thriller, which is why it was a 4-star read for me and not a 5-star. This book I technically gave 3.5, but we'll keep it in the 4-star category, and that is Donuts Under a Crescent Moon, Volume 1. Somewhat like Cherry Magic, this is a queer workplace romance, but instead we're following 2 women. And one woman here is really struggling with like her sexuality and her identity in terms of romantic and sexual attraction, because she feels this pressure to be in a relationship and to want to be in a relationship. But when she's by herself and she's really thinking about it, that's not what she wants. She feels this immense pressure to conform to societal standards. And there is this coworker that she doesn't really know, but ends up like interacting with and ends up really admiring, because this coworker really doesn't care about anyone else's expectations. So these 2 strike up a friendship, and I believe that as the series goes on, I think they fall in love. At least one or both of the characters are asexual or on the asexual or aromantic spectrum, and that's never fully addressed by the mangaka, I don't believe, but I still appreciate teen representation, and I still enjoyed this for what it was. Bright Young Woman by Jessica Knoll, a book that I admittedly would not have read had it not been for the Reading Booktubers Favorites video. This is a story following this woman who like ran a sorority, and then her sorority house is attacked by a serial killer, and you're following like the trials and tribulations and things that happened afterward to capture this man and like convict him. I appreciate what the author have to say about true crime and just like how nuanced that conversation was throughout this, and I thought the story was very well developed, but it was about 50% things that actually happened and then 50% fictional. And while the character work in here was very strong in terms of their character development, there are definitely parts of the story that made me uncomfortable and parts of the story that I just felt was really hard to follow. I did enjoy this one, but it wasn't a 5-star read for me. I also read Stolen by the Wolves, which is a Viking Omegaverse romance. So in this one, we are following 2 people. One who's like this Viking warlord kind of person trying to conquer land, and the other one is this woman who's essentially an Omega living in like this very religious, super isolated town that like nobody's ever been able to break into. And it's their love story, or it's the start of their love story. I enjoyed this one. I particularly liked the relationship between the Viking and our female main character. I love the historical romance with it being set in that far in the past with these Vikings, and the way that this system works was interesting to witness, and also just a dichotomy between how she was brought up versus how he was brought up and their relationship. I'm gonna tell you now though, it's much darker than you think it is. I don't encourage you to read this. I think you should go in with caution, because some of the things that our female main character does to herself or witnesses or experiences as part of her community in relation to their religion is really hard to watch, and there definitely is on-page sexual assault in this book, so just be mindful, take care of yourself. If you want to pick this up, just know it's not a lighthearted romance. It definitely is dark. And I read The World Gives Away, which is a sci-fi apocalyptic story. So in this world, Earth is completely destroyed, and something like 150 years ago, everyone on Earth, all of the billionaires and the gajillionaires and whatever it may be, put all of their money together to create a spaceship that was an exact replica of the Earth to the best of their ability, and this spaceship would take about 200 years to reach a planet that could host humans. Except that there's a bunch of people who obviously can't afford that, and the way they get around this is that they become indentured servants of sorts. But they're also essentially saying that all of their children will do this too for the next 200 years. This story starts off with our main character, Mira, who is one of these people who her ancestors forced her into slavery, essentially, and she is taking care of this baby who she loves, little baby Charlotte, and Charlotte's parents, exit stage left. So now you're following Mira as she takes this baby across the entire spaceship, which again is the size of the world, trying to evade and escape police and find answers for why these people did this and like what exactly did they know that scared them so much. And the other point of view you're following is this detective who's trying to catch Mira. I thought Mr. Detective Man was so fucking annoying and pathetic. Quite honestly, every time I heard his point of view, I was like, I don't care. I will say that the ending felt a little bit emotionally manipulative, because the reason why it ends that way doesn't really make any fucking sense if you think about why wouldn't there have been another solution. I read No Earls Allowed by Shanna Galen, which is the story of this woman who runs this orphanage. She's like hella rich, and she's like some earl's daughter or something, but she decides that she's gonna go run this orphanage with these like 8 to 10 little boys, like very young little boys, in this really terrible part of London that's super dangerous for her, and her father is deeply concerned, so her father calls in the help of his friend's son, who was like this military man, to come and bring his daughter home. Except that he goes, and she's like, I take instructions from no man. And she stays there, and he is forced to stay there with her to take care of her and the children. I think the little boys throughout this were one of the strongest parts of this story, just because they're so fun to like listen to. But this book also has a lot of emotional complexity and potentially triggering subjects in here. It is not a lighthearted, soft romance. You definitely do have your rom-com moments, but both of these characters are dealing with very difficult things, including grief and PTSD. I like the relationship between these two characters. I just don't feel like the romance was the strongest part of this story. I think the characters were the strongest part of the story, and the premise of this was really interesting, which is why it was a 4-star read. I read Real by Kennedy Ryan. Finally, this is a story about this woman who is an actress, and she's like just trying to find her big break. She loves acting. Wow, that's shiny. And she ends up performing in this play. This man, who's a super famous director, his name is Cannon, he goes to see her performance, and he thinks that she is brilliant and hires her to be the leading actress in this movie about a woman named Desi Blue. And it's a biopic about like Black history and the importance of Desi Blue, and people like Desi Blue who are forgotten by history but played such a pivotal and integral role to some of the things that happened throughout history. So she gets the role, and this is their love story. It's really interesting because of the things that Neva is dealing with, and also this whole underlying tension between Canon and Neva, because obviously there's this power dynamic. This book made me cry because some of the things that Neva deals with. Neva has a chronic illness. I believe she has lupus, and you are following her story. I really love this. It wasn't a perfect read for me, but it was still a great 4-star read. And we're back with Bro and the Beast Volume 3, which I actually gave 4 stars. Same thing. Mr. Frat Bro and werewolf alpha person who thinks that Mr. Frat Bro is his mate and an omega are now navigating some new circumstances and some new changes. And even though this one was chaotic, fantasy-wise, it had the highest fantasy elements, and it was just really fun to read, even if I think certain things didn't fully make sense in terms of the characters' reactions. But I will say this is the book that made me think, do I want to continue with this series? Like, do I actually care what happens next? One Dark Window. One Dark Window is the story of this woman who has this kind of monster creature in her head that she calls the Nightmare. And the reason this being lives in her head is because she contracted this magical illness as a child that in other circumstances would have gotten her executed, but her family hid her away. But a consequence of the fever for her, the magic that she got is the nightmare in her head and the things that she's able to do. And we're following her and the highwayman as they are trying to take down the kingdom. I really like this. I gave it a 4-star, but I can't tell you why I really liked it. It's not that I thought the writing was particularly strong. I think it's that I liked the nightmare. And I liked the story behind the nightmare and just like how he came in. This is often pitched as a romantasy, which I will tell you, I think that the romance in here is the weakest element of the story. I do not give 2 fucks whether or not these characters are together. Their chemistry was 0 to me. Anytime they were together, I was like, I don't see it. Why do you two want to be together? I shipped her with his sister before I shipped her with him. The Spitfire by Christy Caldwell, which is a really interesting historical romance with a very fun premise. So in this one, we are following this man who is like the Earl of something, trying to create a police force in London. And then we're following this woman who is a sex worker, or was a sex worker. They would have called her a Lady of the Night in the story and in that time period. And she was forced into that, but she's trying to make her own way, saved money, and worked really, really hard to open a music hall. Now, she is just minding her business in the streets of London. She knows these streets, so she's like, I didn't see shit. But she sees this man getting his ass beat and like literally about to be murdered, and he's unconscious. And she's like, mind your business. I need to mind my business. But she can't. So she pulls out a pistol and she tells the men who are attacking this poor man on the street, like, leave him alone or I will fucking kill you. And they're like, no, you're not. And she shoots. And they're like, oh, yeah, you are. So they run, they leave, and she takes care of him. Surprise, surprise, who is the man that she saved but Mr. Earl, who's trying to pass this law? They go their separate ways, except that he ends up passing this bill that closes down her music hall. And she's like, I do not fucking think so. This man who has no knowledge of fucking anything is not taking this from me. So she finds his address, goes to his house, and promptly beats his ass. And it's their love story. I really like this. I like how playful he is with her. And again, the deeper conversations being had here about the differences in their class, wealth, what he had access to, his blindness to his own privilege, but also the things that she's been forced to deal with as a woman and how she was forced into sex work, created a situation that was better for herself, and she's trying to do that for other people. I've said this before, but I will say it again. I just love a bad bitch. And she is a bad bitch. Bride by Allie Hazelwood. This is Allie's first traditionally published paranormal romance. And in this one, we're following a vampire named Misery and a werewolf named Lo. And they end up in an arranged kind of marriage situation to strengthen the alliance between the werewolves and the vampires because a new human, like, governor is being put into power. And they're like, I don't know how it's going to work for us. So they agreed to create alliance. You're following their love story, but what you're really following is this underlying murder mystery, because the only reason Misery agrees to marry Lo is because she thinks that Lo has some kind of connection to her missing friend. Her friend who was like her sister, her best friend in the world, who just mysteriously disappeared, and she's determined to find her at any like means necessary. I really liked this because I just love Allie Hazelwood's books and writing, but my critique of this is that Lo is almost not in the story at all for the first 120 plus pages. Like, he is a side character in his own romance, and the mystery element of this really overpowered the romance severely, that this felt more like a paranormal book as opposed to a paranormal romance. I liked Lo and Misery together. I just wish that I got to see more of Lo and Misery together. I've also heard people say this is Omegaverse. Girlies who read Omegaverse will tell you this is not an Omegaverse. Yes, Lo has a knot, but you know what this book doesn't have? Omegas. All right, coming to the end of the 4-star reads, I read From Duke Till Dawn. In this one, we're following this woman who's a scammer. Again, I love a bad bitch. She's a scammer, and she scams rich-ass men from their money by pretending to be a widow and just making them feel bad for her. So she does this to his man, but she feels really bad about it because he was actually really nice and they had a great connection, but girls gotta eat. You know, she's got to eat. So she takes some money from him, and they never speak to each other again. And he is distraught. He's like, I'm in love with her. He calls her his lost queen. He's like, no, this is the love of my life. Like, why can't I find her? His friends pull him to a gambling hall that just opened up in London. Who does he run into? But his lost queen. Except that he finds out very quickly she's a scammer, and she has scammed him out of his money, and he's pissed, but she ends up in some serious hot water, and despite himself, he still finds himself helping her. I think that their relationship was really fun to read about. This isn't my favorite historical romance, but I still had a really good time with it. I thought that it was funny and intriguing and well balanced, and the relationship had a good balance. The rom-com moments in here were rom-comming, but there was definitely this underlying pressure and threat moving the plot along. Love in the Time of Serial Killers, a book that took me completely by surprise. What's the plot of this book? It doesn't have one. It doesn't have one. What's the premise of this book? This woman's father dies, and she goes back to Florida to kind of get his house ready to sell, and she has this next door neighbor who she thinks is a serial killer because she's actually really, really paranoid and thinks almost anyone can be a serial killer due to the nature of her work and that it's their love story. I don't think that's going to work for everyone, especially if you're looking for a plot and for something to happen. This is not the book to pick up, but I said this in my review, which is my most recent video that I posted, so I'll have that link. But if you're a hyper independent girly with an avoidant attachment style, this is you. This is you. In this book, I personally felt the author was seeing a little bit too much of me, but I really liked this. I don't know why this book made me cry, but it did. It did make me cry, and I really enjoyed this. It's definitely not an all-time favorite, but it was a lot more enjoyable than I thought it was going to be. I read The Bullet That Missed by Richard Osman. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to tell you anything about those books because I will be reviewing them fully in an upcoming reading vlog where I give this series a second chance. Which leaves me with my final 4-star read, which is Georgie All Along. Georgie All Along follows this woman named Georgie who just lost her job as a PA to a celeb because this person decided, yeah, I'm done with this shit. I'm gonna go live my best farm life. And Georgie is shit out of luck, so she goes back to her super tiny town in the South. I'm forgetting which state exactly. And she is just trying to find herself because she feels lost. She doesn't know what she wants to do next. She doesn't feel like she has any kind of direction. She's staying at her parents' house, except that when she goes to her parents' house, a man is already there because her parents let this man stay there, but didn't tell Georgie that they were doing that. But they agreed to become roommates. This is Levi, who is our love interest, and it's their love story. Levi is grumpy, Georgie is sunshine, which, I don't typically love all the time, but I did really love in this book. And it's just about them finding themselves both in their relationship, but also in their own individual lives and how they navigate expectations others have of them and expectations they have of themselves. If you have ever felt lost or purposeless or directionless, you may see yourself in these characters. I thought the relationship was very sweet, and I said this in my description, but I think that if you liked Get a Life, Chloe Brown, or People We Meet on Vacation, this book feels like a combination of those two books. And now we come to my 5-star reads. Killing Stalking Volume 1. This is a manhwa about this man who's obsessed with this other man and is stalking him in Korea. And he breaks into this other man's house and he's like, oh my gosh, I think his name is Sunwoo. He's like, I just love Sunwoo so much. And it's like rolling around in his sheets. Except that he hears screaming from the basement and he's like, what's that? What's that? So he goes down there and Sunwoo is killing somebody because guess what? Sunwoo is a serial killer. Mr. Stalker Man only manages to escape with his life because he's like, Sunwoo, don't kill me. I love you. I don't care that you're a serial killer. And then he's being held hostage. This is described as a romance. It'd be the most toxic romance you've ever fucking read in your life because this man is literally being held hostage. This other man, Mr. Serial Killer, he's abusive. There are so many content warnings in this book, but the way that the story is told is so compelling and just like so interesting to read. You're there kind of reading it behind your hand because it's so intense, but you just can't help but read it. You're like, what is this? Like, what is going on? What is this whole situation? Is like he going to escape or not? And what is Sunwoo's deal? Sunwoo is a serial killer, and he's not a morally gray serial killer. He kills whoever he wants whenever he feels like it for very arbitrary and oftentimes extremely problematic, as if killing someone isn't inherently problematic. Extremely problematic reasons. It's still such an interesting story to read if you're looking for like a psychological thriller. The illustrations in here are so gorgeous, but this book is scary. Give it 5 stars. The Right Move by Liz Tomford, which again, I think is Liz Tomfordy. Anyway, in this story, it's a sports romance, and we're following Ryan, who is the kind of head of this basketball team, very much super famous, up and coming in his career, has hella fucking money, and he ends up rooming with a woman named Indy. Now, Indy is his twin sister's best friend whose fiance, ex-boyfriend, like cheated on her, and she has nowhere to go, so she and Ryan end up rooming together, so it's like forced proximity, but they also end up fake dating because Ryan is scared that he's going to be cut from the team because the person who like owns the team doesn't think that he has a life outside of basketball. I really love this romance for like how soft and gentle it was. It was also super spicy in here, so like the smutty scenes in here really worked for me, but the relationship itself was just really cute, and Ryan is the epitome of someone who is so thoughtful and so gentle with Indy and just really works to meet her needs, and I just love that. A historical romance that was a 5-star read for me is An Earl to Remember by Stacey Reed. This is an overboard retelling following a woman who is a chef and gets the opportunity to work this yacht party for this hella rich and famous Earl, and she does it, except that through a series of misunderstandings, she's bringing food to his room, but he's expecting a threesome from like his mistress and her friends, so he just assumes that she's one of the friends and is like all up on her, and the mistress walks in and is like, what the fuck are you doing? And she gets fired unfairly and without pay. So she is pissed and she heads back home. And the Earl and his mistress get into a fight and he ends up falling overboard, hitting his head, and losing all of his memories. Surprise, surprise, where does he wash up but this woman's small town, the chef who was unjustly fired. And he says some shit that like forces her into a situation to be like, nope, that's actually my husband. You know how I was gone for a few weeks? I was actually getting married. Say hello to hubby. And to get her revenge, she makes him work on their farm and like take care of their task and their chores and the kids, and she feels guilty, but like it's their love story. They fall in love. This was so amusing and reminded me how much I loved the movie Overboard, which I can't tell you how young I must have been to watch this, but I remembered how much I loved this, and it carried over into this book. This is so much fun. It is so amusing. The humor is such tongue-in-cheek like humor, but the Earl is still the Earl, even though he's lost his memories. Like, his personality how he goes about these chores is so funny to witness, and I just love them together. So a solid 5-star read for me. I Married an Incubus by Regine Abel. This is set in the same world as the Prime Mating Agency, except that we're following a woman who has been wrongfully convicted, essentially because she found dirt on this judge who's like extremely corrupt, and he's not having it. So he sentences her to life on this prison planet where essentially she would die, but she doesn't deserve to go there. So the Prime Mating Agency step in, and they're trying their best to help her, but the best thing they can do is marry her off to a prison warden and like try to convince him that she's innocent and this judge is corrupted. So you're following that entire storyline. It was just so good. Come on. Like, sex demon husband. Yes, the sex scenes were definitely super spicy and like super fun to read, but also it was just really interesting trying to like navigate this kind of political intrigue and these characters taking down this judge and just the consequences they faced like each and every step of the way, as well as some really exciting action adventure scenes. I loved this. And this final book I'm actually going to keep to myself because I'm reading that in an upcoming reading blog, which you will be seeing in the second-ish week of April. With that said, I have been speaking for over an hour. Thank you for bearing with me. If you've gotten to the end of this video, leave a yellow heart emoji in the comments below just so I can know that you've gotten this far. Thank you so much if you have gotten this far. Thank you for watching this video, and I am going to see you in my next one. Bye!